My name is Nora. I'm 56. I own a small art gallery in Richmond, Virginia, which means my job is to help people see things they might otherwise walk past. I find that ironic now. My husband Paul died 8 months ago. Pancreatic cancer, we said. A fast illness, I told people. Devastating but mercifully quick. That was the story I had. It wasn't the whole story. The whole story started 3 years earlier. In a doctor's office Paul attended alone and never mentioned to me once. I found it while filing insurance paperwork. One document referenced a claim from 3 years ago, an oncology consultation. I didn't recognize the date. I didn't recognize the clinic. I requested the medical records the following week. The diagnosis was dated 37 months before Paul died. He'd known for 3 years, 1 month and 11 days. He had known on every ordinary morning we had together after that. He had known and said nothing, and in that gap between what I knew and what he knew, I am still trying to find myself. Paul was a civil engineer who became a high school science teacher in his 40s because he decided he'd rather explain how things work than build them for people who would never know he'd built them. That tells you something about him. He was present, genuinely, specifically present. The kind of person who remembered what you told him 3 weeks ago and asked about it. We had been married 28 years. I thought I knew him completely. I thought we had the kind of marriage where the other person is not a mystery. He was, it turns out, protecting me so well that I had no idea. I want to say clearly, our marriage was not a performance. It was real. 28 years of the particular intimacy of two people who have shared a home, shared money worries, shared the raising of 2 children, shared the ordinary weight of a life. He was the person I would have told first about anything. He did not offer me the same. The medical records were thorough. Paul had been, apparently, a meticulous patient. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, diagnosed 37 months before his death. A course of chemotherapy that Paul underwent during what he told me were professional development weeks at a teaching conference in Baltimore. There were notes about his decision to limit disclosure. The oncologist had written, "Patient has made an informed decision to manage disclosure of diagnosis independently. Family not currently aware. Patient's autonomy respected." His autonomy, he had the right. And I find I am still, 8 months later, not sure how I feel about that. In those 3 years, in the space between his diagnosis and my knowing, Paul was busy. He paid off the remaining 12 years of our mortgage. I noticed the account changes, but he said it was a refinancing he'd arranged. He wrote letters to both our children, sealed, labelled "open when you need to," which they found after he died. He called my sister Claire, from whom I had been estranged for 6 years, and they spoke on the phone for 2 hours. Claire told me this afterward, crying. He said he wanted to make sure you weren't alone. He was building the world I would live in, without telling me that's what he was doing. 2 years into his diagnosis, Paul said, "Let's go to Portugal." We've been saying we would for 15 years. We went in September, 2 weeks. I didn't know it was his goodbye trip. I thought it was us finally following through on a promise we'd kept making and delaying. I have photographs from that trip. In most of them, Paul is looking at me rather than at the view. I noticed it at the time and thought, how sweet, he prefers to look at me. Now I understand he was memorizing. He was saying goodbye to Portugal and to me, and I was just having a holiday. There was one person Paul told, David, his college friend, someone I'd known for 28 years. David called me 2 weeks after I found the records. He said, I've been waiting for you to find out. I've been carrying this for 2 years. I asked him why he hadn't told me. He said, he asked me not to, and he was so certain. He said, she'll grieve for longer if she knows in advance. Let me give her as much normal as I have left. Let me give her as much normal as I have left. That sentence, I keep returning to it. I have worked out from the dates which evening it was. The diagnosis was on a Tuesday. Paul made pasta, a simple one, aglio e olio, which he made when he was tired and didn't want to think too hard. I came home, the kitchen smelled of garlic. Paul poured me a glass of wine and asked how the opening went. He sat across from me and listened. He asked follow-up questions. He washed the dishes. He had been told earlier that day that he was going to die. And he made pasta, and he asked about my evening, and he washed the dishes. I don't know what to do with that. He told me the Baltimore conferences were for continuing education. He went 4 times over 18 months. I found the hotel receipts in the records. The hotels were not near any conference centre. They were near Johns Hopkins Hospital. I looked up photographs on my phone. He'd sent me a few during those trips. A selfie in a hotel room, a picture of a meal. I'd replied with heart emojis and told him to sleep well. He looked in those photographs a little tired. I'd assumed it was travel. I see now the particular tiredness of chemotherapy. For 3 years I was not looking. He had arranged it that way. He paid off the mortgage, not dramatically, incrementally over 18 months, with explanations that were plausible. When I understood what he had actually been doing, I stood in the kitchen for a long time looking at the walls. This house is mine, completely. No debt, no worry. He arranged that. He arranged it because he knew I would be here alone, and he wanted the house to be one less thing I had to carry. I am grateful for this, genuinely. And also, he made that decision for me. He decided what I needed. He decided without asking. My sister Claire called me 3 weeks after the funeral. We had not spoken in 6 years. She said, well, Paul contacted me 18 months ago. He asked me to call you. I told him I wasn't ready. He called again 6 months later, and then again. 3 calls. He made 3 calls to my estranged sister to ask her to come back to me. He told her, I need to know someone is looking after her. She didn't know then why he was asking. She knows now, and she is here. She was at my kitchen table this morning. He gave me my sister back. From wherever he is, he gave her back to me. The line I return to most often is in the oncologist's notes from the first consultation. It is clinical, matter of fact. Patient has requested that family not be informed at this time. Patient states he wishes to manage his remaining time without his wife experiencing anticipatory grief. Patient's autonomy in this decision is noted and respected. He thought about my grief. He weighed my grief against his own need for support, and he chose to carry his alone, so I would not have to carry mine until I had to. I have read that line 40, 50 times. I cannot decide if it is the most loving thing anyone has ever done for me, or the most. I don't have the word for it yet. I'm still looking for the word. Our last Christmas together, 8 months before he died, I remember thinking how present he was. More present than usual. He wanted to cook everything. He sat with each of our children individually. He gave me a gift I hadn't expected, a framed print of a piece I'd mentioned admiring 2 years earlier. I thought, this is what illness does. It clarifies. He was clarifying, yes. He was also saying goodbye to Christmas. He was memorizing our children's faces at the table. That Christmas happened in one room and in 2 completely different realities. The letters to the children were in his desk, sealed, labeled with their names. Underneath each, open when you need to. Our daughter found hers first, about 2 months after he died. She called me afterward crying, "How did he know exactly what I needed to hear?" Our son texted me a photograph of one line from his. It said, "You are more capable than you're currently giving yourself credit for. I've been watching you all your life. I know." Paul had written those letters while undergoing chemotherapy. He was so busy loving us forward into a future he wasn't going to reach. Here is what I have found in the gap between his decision and mine. He gave me 3 years of ordinary life. That is a gift. I recognize it as a gift. But he also took something. He took the chance to be his caregiver, to sit with him at appointments, to hold his hand in a hospital room and say, "I'm not going anywhere." He took the chance to say goodbye, knowing it was goodbye. He decided I didn't need to be that wife. He decided without asking what kind of love I got to offer him at the end. People ask me if I'm angry. I don't think I'm angry. I think I'm something that doesn't have a clean name yet. Paul was not wrong, exactly. He had the legal right. He had the moral argument. He had the love behind it. And yet, there is a version of me, the version that would have sat with him in Baltimore, who never got to exist. He decided she wasn't necessary. He was trying to protect me. He was also, without knowing it, deciding who I got to be. And I'm not sure anyone gets to make that decision for another person, even from love, especially from love. There was one more thing in his desk, a letter to me, unfinished. It started up, "Nora, I need to tell you why." Then, "I know you will have questions. I know you may be angry. I want to explain." And then it stopped, mid-sentence. He never finished it. He ran out of time or energy or the right words. I'll never know which. I have the beginning of his explanation and none of the rest. I have been writing the rest myself, in my head. For 8 months, I'm not sure I'll ever stop. I've been sitting with this question for 8 months. Was what he did a gift or a theft? He gave me 3 more years of normal, of waking up next to him without the weight of a countdown, of Portugal in September, where I was simply happy. That is a gift. I received it, I cannot give it back. But he also took 3 years, in which I could have known, in which I could have been a different kind of present. Both of these things are true, and the fact that they're both true is a thing I keep sitting with. I'm both grateful and bereft. I expect I'll be both for a very long time. People ask, would you have wanted to know? Yes, immediately, without hesitation, yes. I would have gone to every appointment. I would have sat in the waiting room with terrible coffee and a book I couldn't concentrate on, and I would have been there when he came out. I would have said many times with the weight it deserved, I love you. I said it, of course, plenty of times over those 3 years, but I would have said it differently. I would have said it knowing. He didn't let me. He loved me enough to not let me say goodbye properly, and I am still trying to understand that. There is a term in medical ethics, protective deception, the deliberate withholding of information on the grounds that knowing the truth will cause more harm than not knowing. The research on this is genuinely complicated. There are people who choose to tell, there are people who choose to protect. Neither group is wrong. Both make the decision from love. What the research also shows is that the person who is protected often grieves differently, longer, sometimes more disoriented. Paul knew this risk. The oncologist's notes say he asked about it. He decided the trade was worth it. He decided for both of us. And I am still learning what it means to have been loved that way. I've been writing the rest of his letter, the part he didn't finish. In my version, he explains that he was afraid too, that there was some selfishness in the love, as there is in all love. In my version, he says he's sorry for taking the choice from me, and then he says what I think he actually believed, that he would do it again, that he had calculated the cost and paid it on my behalf. I don't know if my version is true, but writing it helps me, the way his letters probably helped him. Some things you have to say to a piece of paper first. Paul had a garden, vegetables mostly, a herb section he was unreasonably proud of. This spring I found myself in the garden, kneeling in the soil, trying to understand what he had planted and what needed to happen next. The tomatoes came up in June, not all of them, but enough. I stood there looking at them and thought, he planted these, knowing he wouldn't see them. He planted them for me. He was always one season ahead of himself. He was always thinking about the next thing I would need and making sure it was there. I didn't know how to see that fully until now. I'm learning. I want to say something to anyone who is carrying something alone right now. Something large, something medical, something that would change the life of the person you love most, and is considering not telling them because you want to protect them. Please tell them, not because you don't have the right. You do, not because your instinct to shield them is wrong. It isn't. But because the person you love is also capable of more than you think. The love that says, I'll carry this so you don't have to, is real love. But so is the love that says, let me carry it with you. You get to choose, but so should they. If you can, let them choose. And I want to say something to anyone who is or was in my position, anyone who found out after the fact that someone loved you by protecting you from something. You're allowed to grieve both things. You're allowed to be grateful for the protection and also sad that you didn't get to choose. You're allowed to say, I know why you did it, and I love you for it, and I wish you hadn't. All of those things can be true in the same breath. You don't have to decide he was right or decide he was wrong. You can just sit with all of it for as long as you need. I have 2 questions for you today. The first is for anyone who is carrying something hard alone right now. What would happen if you told them? Not the fear, the actual answer. The second is for anyone who has been protected by someone's silence. Would you have wanted to know? I think about this question differently on different days. Some days the answer is clearly yes. Other days I look at those photographs from Portugal and I'm not sure. The not being sure is where I live now. Leave it in the comments. Tell me where you live on this. I am reading everything. It matters to me more than you know. Before you go, if there is someone in your life right now who seems fine, who is going through everything with ease, who says, "Don't worry about me," and means it, check on them anyway. Not because they're lying, because the people who carry things alone have usually practiced carrying things alone for a very long time. And sometimes what they need most is not for you to take the weight, but just to know you see it. To know that their silence doesn't make them invisible, that someone noticed, that someone is there, even when they said they were fine. Check on the people who seem fine. They might be, but they might be carrying something alone that doesn't have to be carried that way. Breathe well.